Good day, beautiful people. This is Natalie Silva with Life Treasures and Golden Moments. Welcome back to my September podcast. This month, I'd like to share with you a couple of uplifting stories that I think you might enjoy and give you food for thought. And now the first one is called Memoir of a Violin, and it was authored by Teresa Marie Heim. I peered through the window of the charming little violin shop, and my heart began to race. I've been out with friends for my usual Friday evening of good food and good conversation. My dinner companions had decided to retire early, however, and since I wasn't ready to call it a night yet, I had decided to walk home from the restaurant rather than take a ride home with my friends. I traveled that way before, but I'd never noticed the quaint little shop or even the sign outside. Had I seen it, I probably would have hurried by across the street to avoid it. But for some reason that night, I felt drawn to the violin shop. I wiped the condensation from the window with my jacket sleeve to get a better look inside. Several violins hung from the painted chip walls, patiently waiting to be repaired. As my eyes wandered around the room, I felt as though I were looking through a window into the past, my own past. Once, many years before, the violin had been my passion. As a child, I had attempted many pursuits, most of them chosen by my mother. Join the swim team, Tara. Your sister Monica is a good swimmer. Surely you will be too. What my mother refused to acknowledge, however, was that I had an aversion to water. In fact, I was afraid of it, and still am today. Every Saturday I begged my mother not to make me go to the swim meet, but she always prevailed. I would tremble with each bane of the starting pistol, and it would take every ounce of strength I had to dive into that cold water and swim to the other side of the pool as fast as I could. It was, of course, never fast enough. My arms would flap wildly and my feet would kick recklessly, while the other swimmers glided past me. I would have given up long before I did, if it had not been for my dad. From beneath the water I could hear the muffled sound of his encouraging shouts as he called my name and cheered me on. When at last I would raise my hand to grab the edge of the pool, he would always be there waiting for me with a warm, dry towel and telling me how proud he was of me for trying. Gymnastics was another sport my mother decided would be good for me, partly because she had been a gymnast when she was young. She didn't seem to consider the fact that I was extremely tall for my age and quite a few pounds overweight. To please her, I tried anyway. Much to my surprise and my mother's delight, I actually enjoyed my short-term fling in the world of pommel horses and parallel bars. I especially liked the trampoline. I spent most of my hour-long gymnastics class jumping as high as I could, trying to reach the asphalt ceiling. My mother, however, wasn't satisfied with my simple mastery of bouncing up and down. I was strongly urged to attempt more daring feats of flexibility. In my effort to please her, however, I attempted more than I was capable of and ended up breaking my ankle bone. The annoying limp I carry with me today is all that remains of my futile stint as a gymnast. For most of my youth, I wondered if I would ever be good at anything. I certainly didn't have my mother's or my sister's athletic talents, nor did I have any interest in competitive sports. A fact my mother found difficult to understand. Maybe I'm just not the athletic type, I would say. Maybe you just don't try hard enough, she would respond. My lack of avocation was a subject of many disagreements between my parents. I lay awake at night listening to them argue over my fate. She needs to find something to do with herself and stick to it, Mom would say. You need to let her discover her own talents and stop trying to make those decisions for her, Dad would argue. After one such argument, my father came into my room to say good night. When he kissed my cheek, his lips caught a fresh tear. Why are you crying, honey? He asked. I just want to make her happy, Daddy, I said, choking on my tears. I try and I try, but nothing I do is ever good enough. That's not true, Tara, he said. Your mother and I are so proud of you. No, she's not. Of course she is, he said. She just wants you to find the gifts God has blessed you with and use them wisely. What do you mean, gifts? The special things that make you, you, he said. If you look deep inside your heart, you find what it is that makes you shine. But how will I know what that is? You'll know, honey, you'll know. But what if there isn't anything inside of me that shines? Oh, everybody shines, Tara, he said. In their own way, everyone shines. By junior high school, I still hadn't found my way to shine. One day, our school's orchestra conductor and several Irish protégés came into my classroom, where I'd been daydreaming as usual, and gave a demonstration. The drums annoyed me, the flutes bored me, but the violin, the violin. It made the sweetest sound I'd ever heard. I seemed to rise and float on the silvery notes, emancipating from its delicately curved wooden body. I watched, fascinated, as the bow caressed the strings, imagining I was the one making that beautiful music. A warm glow enveloped me. For the first time in my life, I was enraptured, and I was shining. I ran all the way home after school, clutching the paperwork tightly. My hand trembled as I gave the permission slip to my parents, for I feared they might summarily dismiss my desire. They didn't. My mother was thrilled to see me finally excited about something, and my father winked at me as he eagerly signed the slip. I took to the violin like a skylark to flight. In the small town where I grew up, few budding musicians chose to play the violin. In my case, it was as if the instrument had chosen me. I rose quickly in ability. Before long, I had landed the first seat in the community orchestra and had rated a feature story in the local newspaper. I'd found my calling and was on my way to a promising career as a professional violinist. My family attended every concert I performed in, and their pride in me, especially my father's, was palpable. As soon as my bow hit the strings, his face would light up, and he was always the first to stand and applaud when I'd finished. Even my mother beamed, her eyes glistening during my performances. Every night after my father came home from his stressful job in the police force, he'd sit down in his favorite chair with a beer in one hand and a cigarette in the other and listen to me practice. "Play me a song, Tara," he'd say. I was always happy to oblige. He would seem almost mesmerized by the music. That was the only time of the day I saw him totally relaxed. One afternoon I came home from the orchestra practice to find my sister wild-eyed and with tears streaming down her cheeks, frantically pressing the buttons on the phone. "What's wrong?" I asked, terrified. Dad, was all she could say. My hand still clutching my violin case, I ran to my parents' bedroom. My father was lying on the bed, and my mother was pounding on his chest. "Daddy," I called out to him. Daddy, what's the matter?" "Get out, Tara, get out now," my mother commanded furiously, pumping his chest. "But Mama, get out," she bellowed, the sound of her voice scaring me almost as much as my motionless father. I couldn't move. Yet I couldn't just stand there doing nothing while the person I cherished above all others, my mentor and my protector, died right before my eyes. I had to do something. There had to be something I could do to make him stay, to bring him back. People die. I understood that. But other people, not my dad. Father's supposed to live forever and never leave you. As if in a trance, I hastily removed the violin from its case and began to play for my father. First Beethoven, then Orff. I played more fervently and passionately than I'd ever played before. I played and I played, unable to stop, certain that if I did, my father would die. As the paramedics entered the bedroom and began working on my father, I continued to play. While they placed an oxygen mask over his mouth and electric paddles on his chest and tried reviving his lifeless body again and again, I played. I played so hard and fast I could have woken the dead, but I couldn't wake my father. It wasn't until I heard the words, "I'm sorry, we did all we could," that I finally stopped playing. And the beautiful music gave way to horrified wails of my mother. I dropped the violin to the floor, vowing never to play again. Staring at the woman reflected in the window of that violin shop, I barely recognized the young girl. It had been many years since I had last thought of that harrowing afternoon, the memory of which I had spent most of my life trying to repress. It had been even longer since I'd played the violin. True to my vow, I hadn't picked it up since my last solo performance for my father. When I entered my apartment, I went directly to the closet and removed my violin from its case, where it had lain untouched for more than 20 years. With a soft cloth, I brushed the years of accumulated dust from its still luxurious wooden body, wondering if it could still be in tune. When I slid the bow across the strings, the violin made a low, rumbling sound, telling me it was not. I adjusted the knobs, surprised that I actually remembered how. I walked over to my dresser and stood before the picture of my father. I slowly raised the violin to my chin and held it securely to my shoulder. My hand quivered as I lifted the bow. I gingerly placed the rod on the strings. My trembling hand instantly calmed, and I began to play Pacelli's Canon in D. What a beautiful story. How often are we not aware of the gifts that God has given us? And sometimes when you have an experience like Teresa did, you give up on those special gifts that God has given you. I've known people that have done that. And that makes them too sad to play if they're a musician, because it brings back that memory. But the person or the people that you've lost would not want you to do that. So to all of you out there, every one of you has special gifts. And sometimes it takes a while to find out what they are. But keep looking, you'll find them, because that's what makes you special. And I thank our author today, Miss Teresa, for that beautiful story. It gives us all food for thought. This next story I want to share with you is also an inspirational story. And it was written by Lorianne Porter. And the title of it is called Oh, the Dandelions. It's a story about a little girl who sees beauty in the world through her eyes. Like most little children, that's all they see, perfection and beauty. And sometimes it'd be good to get back on their shoes and start looking at life that way, because sometimes I think we all become a little bit jaded. But through the eyes of children, they make the world a better place. So I think you will enjoy this story too. It's really, really touching. I long ago stopped thinking of dandelions as my enemies, while lawn perfectionists seemed them only as challenging pests. To me, they represent innocence and beauty and wonder. The sight or even the mere thought of dandelions brings back to me beautiful memories of a time when a child's faith, bolstered by a grown-up's guidance, made the impossible seem possible and magical. Ah, the dandelions, as my young daughter used to call them. "Mom, what's a dandy?" she would ask. I would dutifully explain that a dandy was a very fancy English gentleman from a long time ago. He was the kind of man who wore a colorful scarf called an escort around his neck, a shiny tall hat called a top hat, and fine gloves to keep his manicured hands smooth and soft. A dandy always covered his shoes with white leather straps called spats to protect them from dirt and scuffs. To finish off his outfit, he always looped a fresh flower of the season into his buttonhole on his jacket. Inevitably, she would draw her two little hands from behind her back and present me with a crumpled full fistful of the brightest yellow dandelions. "For you, Mom," she'd say, "a whole bouquet of brand new flowers for your buttonholes." I never had the heart to tell her that no upstanding dandy would ever have been caught with one of those weeds on his person. Instead, I would embrace her along with the bright little flowers on their squash stems. At least once every summer throughout my daughter's childhood, this little play would be acted out. My daughter never asked about the lion part of the name of what it might have to do with the dandy, so I never felt compelled to explain. She didn't realize her spelling error until about the 4th grade when she learned the textbook definition of the word. The two of us knew that dandelion was the correct interpretation and that Dandelion was probably just a harder way of spelling it. I told her, however, that in the meantime she would have to spell it the teacher's way when she was in school. She, like all little people, looked forward to the end of the summer when the dandelions turned to seed. When she was very young, I had told her that the white puffy ball that replaced the yellow flower held magic and would bring her wonderful gifts. "Hold the dandy like this," I instructed, placing the spent flower near my face. "Then make a secret wish. Take a deep breath and blow. When all the white pieces of flower take to the air and fly up to heaven, God will grant you a special wish." Every summer I watch her repeat this ritual, usually with some awkwardness, but always with great seriousness. She somehow understood at a very young age that God wouldn't always deliver her wish exactly the way she requested it, but that what she eventually would receive would be close enough. In hindsight, I believe that her faith in her dandelion and in her wishes laid the foundation of the growth of her spiritual faith. One lazy August day in the year my daughter turned 7, I watched her meander about in our backyard field, where the bright yellow dandies had already turned to seed. She traveled carefully so as not to disturb any of the tiny little angel wings, as she called them. She surveyed the field carefully, looking for just the right dandy. A few times she picked one too hard, sending its angel wings flying on the wind before she could make a wish. I saw her carefully pluck one with a full white puffball atop a firm, bright green stem. She carefully positioned herself as if in a thoughtful yoga pose and closed her eyes as if to concentrate on the best wish ever, all the while holding tightly to her flower. Unfortunately, she held the weed a bit too close to her nose, and when she opened her eyes to make her wish come true, her breath had already sent half of the angel wings into the air. The look of aspiration on her face told me that the task was perhaps bigger than she could handle. I waited some time for her to share her thoughts, to ask for help, but she apparently needed to work it out herself. No little dandelion was going to outsmart her and keep her from her perfect wish. I watched a while longer as she stubbornly attempted to conquer the dandelion patch one by one to no avail. Knowing that the dandelion season was nearing its end, I finally asked her if she'd made at least one wish. She shook her head, no. "This year I'm doing something different, Mom," she solemnly said. "Oh, what's that?" I asked her. She explained that unless she could wish upon one complete, perfectly rounded dandelion without a single angel wing missing, it wouldn't work. "What won't work, sweetie?" I asked her. "This year, I want all my wishes to come true forever. I know if I blow on the perfect one, that will happen." I gave her a hug. For a brief moment, my eyes filled with tears, and my heart ached as I thought, oh, if only that were true. If only it were that easy. The sweet sound of her voice suddenly pulled me from my sad reverie. "What are we going to do, Mom? How am I going to do it?" While we snuggled a minute or two longer, an idea came to me. "Maybe we need to catch him by surprise," I told her. "Maybe, just maybe, he doesn't want us to pick him." "But if I can't pick him up, how can I blow my wishes to heaven?" "How about we stand here very still while you pick out one that you think might be the best? Then we'll creep along the ground together and sneak up on that sly old dandy." "Then what, Mom? What good will that do us? He still won't let us pick him." "Well, "We won't pick him," I said. "We'll make our wishes before we crawl over to him. Then when we get close, we'll hold our breath, and when we're right next to him, you can lean down and let all your breath go. That way, you'll catch him by surprise." A joyful look crossed her face. She took a mere minute to select her favorite dandy. Then we rechecked the game plan with each other to make sure our espionage was foolproof. Slowly we began to creep, initially on our hands and knees, but as we drew closer, we moved on our bellies. When we were within a foot of our destination, I gave the signal that it was time to hold our breath by pinching my nose. My daughter did the same. With a tender amusement, I watched her face flush and blow up like a big pink balloon. As she slid closer to her target, her puffed-out cheeks turned bluish-white and looked like they might explode, but the serious look in her eyes and her deliberate forward movement made it clear that she was determined to achieve her goal. About 6 inches from our final destination, I gave her the nod. In the flick of a millennial second, she released all the air her cheeks had been able to hold. Her eyes danced with glee as 10,000 angel wings seemed to take flight, not just from the perfect dandelion she selected, but also from the 20 or 30 dandies surrounding it. "Quickly flip over," I said. Then, lying on our backs and holding hands, we watched as all her wishes floated straight up in the sky and up to heaven. I gazed at her innocent face and, said a silent prayer. "Dear God, if you believe in little girls, especially ones who make wishes, please bless this one lying among the remnants of the dandelions." We had found the perfect dandelion just in time. That evening there was a downpour, and the next day all that remained of the dandelions were hundreds of topless green stems. This year, if all the perfect lawn people bent on whacking, uprooting, and poisoning dandelions could leave just a few for me, I would really appreciate it. You see, my little girl is all grown up now, and the only dandelion bouquets I get are the ones I pick every summer for myself. I wouldn't miss a year without them, because every time I see those angel wings take flight, I know that somewhere, some 7-year-old wishes are coming true. I think it's so important as parents to give our children imagination, to believe in dreams, because that makes them creative in their minds and in their hearts, and makes them well-rounded people. This mom here that wrote this story, she's really special. What a great mother. I thank Lorianne Porter for that beautiful story, and congratulations on being such a great mom. I bet you raised a beautiful daughter. That story was just wonderful. So next on the agenda for the day, I want to share a little laughter story. And I think you'll enjoy this one too, okay? My last story of the day was written by Larry Burnett, and this little bit of humor story. And I think in life sometimes we get a little hurried, all of us do, and think some things are really important and we have to hurry and be on time. And, it doesn't matter some days if you're a minute late, but I think you'll like this. And it was said by Carl Sandburg, "Back of every mistaken venture and defeat is the laughter of wisdom if you listen." So this daddy found out some wisdom after his day with his little boy. I'm kind of a guy who likes to have all his ducks in a row, so I'm fairly disciplined and expect the members of our family to do things in the most efficient way like I do. I especially like us to go places on time. To help my family, I tell them the precise time we're going to leave to go somewhere. That means they have to be seated in the car with all their shopping bags, lunch bags, and assorted gear. I calculate how long it takes to drive somewhere, and if we're visiting someone, the time will arrive. I even tell our host when to expect us. If I'm a few minutes early, we'll drive around the block or engage in other stalling behavior in order to arrive at the precise time. I have quite a reputation to maintain. They'll be here at exactly 1 o'clock, just as they said, people would say. When we were raising our children, we lived in the country, so there were many opportunities to drive places and train everyone to leave at the proper time. One such distance drive was to a hockey practice. The ice surface in the arena in the small village in which we lived was not big enough for bad-time hockey, the minor hockey division of 13 to 14-year-olds. That meant we had to drive to the next town that was about 30 miles away on a winding mountain road. Naturally, I had to have my commute timed just right to get there on time. So, to save time, I had my son put on his hockey gear before we left on one of those drives. I could work those last few minutes after school where I taught him and then walk home in 5 minutes in time to drive him to his practice. Meanwhile, said son was supposed to be getting ready and putting on his gear. This did not always work exactly out the way it should have. Alex would get distracted by something, not having the same sense of discipline I had developed over the years. Or if his brothers happened to be in the same room, there would be some kind of teasing or even an argument going on. "Alex, get going and get dressed," my wife would call out. "Dad will be here in a few minutes." Usually I left it to her to organize him while I headed straight for the car, which was usually parked in the carport. But on this particular day, I first went into the house to grab a snack. Minutes ticked by, however, and I didn't see Alex. "Where is that boy?" I wondered. "He should be here by now. We have to leave." I was seething, red by then. Impatiently, I got into the car, slammed the door, and started backing out of the driveway, tires spinning and spitting gravel out. Out of the corner of my eye, I caught a glimpse of Alex sitting in the back seat, but was too angry to say a word to him, to say anything. It was quite a quiet ride. Inside, I was fuming. I didn't feel like talking. I was used to this drive to the next town, and I focused on the curves and the twists of the road instead of this day. I drove a bit faster than usual, fearing we would be late. Alex needed to make the most of every minute of his time on the ice. Meanwhile, back at the house, another scenario was being played. It was being played out there with the family. I heard about it later. Apparently, Alex had come around the corner to meet me in the driveway. He had come out of the house through the basement door on the other side. He didn't see the car anywhere. My wife was in the house, so we ran back inside. Mom, Dad left without me." "Just wait a few more minutes. He must be coming back to get you," said my wife. Alex waited in the driveway, not knowing what to make of this turn of events. After a while, as I drove along, I imagined my blood pressure going down a bit. We were already 3/4 of the way there, and I glanced back in the rearview mirror to finally say something. "What?" I yelled out loud. "Where is he?" I was sure he was in the car. Looking back again, I saw that what I had thought was Alex's head was his helmet, and it was on a basketball on the leads under the rear window. Looking back, I don't remember how the events of the day sorted themselves out, or if they ever did. Shortly after that incident, my wife urged me to relate the details to some of our visiting friends. They roared with appreciative laughter, but I felt terribly sheepish as I relieved my incredibly embarrassing moment. Oh, my goodness. I know an old story. We had a neighbor once that he and his wife and daughter were traveling cross-country, and they stopped at a gift shop this was years ago, along the highway when they used to have all those little gift shops, and he loaded up in the car with his daughter, and they took off, and they were down the street about 10 miles, I guess, and looked back, and no wife. He left the wife back at the gift shop, didn't realize she wasn't with him. Had to go all the way back. Needless to say, the wife was not too happy. So we all have those circumstances at times. But we just have to sometimes we get so wrapped up in what we're doing, So I thought that was pretty funny. So I hope you enjoyed that today. So anyhow, kiddos and friends that are listening, I thank you for listening today. And I want to close with a a beautiful little poem that someone had sent, a real special person had sent in to me. And that kind of wraps this whole thing up for today about life and kindness and our gifts and being kind to people and kind of slowing down and appreciating life. And this is a little story, and it's called The Magic Bank Account. So this is really good food for thought for you, okay? So this is great, and I hope you enjoy it. The author is unknown, and it was found in the billfold of a Coach Paul Bear Bryant from Alabama after he died in 1982. And it is called The Magic Bank Account. Imagine that you had won the following prize in a contest. Each morning, your bank would deposit $86,000, or more exactly, $86,400, in your private account for your use. However, this prize has rules. The first set of rules, everything that you didn't spend during each day would be taken away from you. You may not simply transfer money into some other account. You may only spend it. So each day you had to spend all this money, okay? Each morning upon awakening, the bank opens your account with another $86,400 for that day. The bank can only end the game without warning at any time. It can say, game over. It can close the account and you will not receive a new one. What would you personally do? You would buy anything and everything you wanted, right? Not only for yourself, but for all the people you love and care for. Even for people you don't know, because you couldn't possibly spend it all on yourself, right? You would try to spend every penny and use it all because you knew it would be replenished the next morning, right? Actually, this game is real. Are you shocked? Well, yes. Each of us is already a winner of this prize. We just can't seem to see it. The prize is time. Each morning we awaken to receive 86,400 seconds as a gift of life. And when we go to sleep at night, any that remains, they're gone for the rest of that day. We haven't used them up, so they're lost forever. Yesterday is forever and it's gone. Each morning the account is refilled, but the bank can dissolve your account without any time, without warning. So what will you do with your 86,400 seconds? Those seconds are worth so much more than the same amount in dollars. Think about it and remember to enjoy every second of your life, because time races by so much quicker than you think. So take care of yourself, be happy, love deeply, and enjoy life. This is Natalie Silva with Life Treasures and Golden Moments. Until next time, take care and may God bless. And spend that 86,400 seconds wisely. Have a good one. Bye now. Thank you.